Today on Lydia's Books, it is weekly reads for nearing the end of June. And I haven't read a heck of a lot. This week I focused on taking my French test. I didn't do very good, but whatever. I have a whole bunch of Richard Laymon books to read, so that makes up for it, doesn't it? But there is a French book in this mix, a kid's book. But we'll start out with something that is absolutely not for kids. Richard Laymon. This is week 3 of Reading in Rumps. I finished reading Cuts, which was as insane as I remembered. I made this little bookmark too in the meantime, and I'm having some fun testing it out, seeing if it leaves any marks in my collector's edition book. But hey, I digress. Cuts is great. The review will be up soon on typicalbooks.com. The review for Endless Night is up there as well, so you can see my expanded thoughts on that book. And I will have one up for Cuts because I had a blast, although I forgot a whole lot of this book and some of the insanity where the bad guy, specifically where Albert goes kind of cross country, and just how much mayhem there really is in this book. I also forgot some of the kind of gooniness that goes on in this, and how it is really a study on substitute teaching and how teachers screw one another continuously. I forgot about that whole plot line because typical of me to focus on the villain almost 100%. So this was for week 3, the villain slaps. And go figure, because this villain, Albert, had stuck out in my mind, no pun intended with the word stuck. The prompt was the villain slaps. My pick, Cuts. This villain creeped me out a lot when I first read it, and he still does. Celebrate Laymon's most over-the-top baddies, pick your favorite psycho, swamp monster, or possessed creep and share the chaos. Now, unlike me, I will start out with a few trigger warnings. There is disrespect of the fetus going on in here, not to the extent of something like Dead Inside, but there is a disrespect to unborn, and being somebody who is very much all about choice, I found this probably a little heavier when I was a teen, and maybe that's part of what freaked me out about it, is that it is like quite brutal when it comes to the unborn. Now, Albert is beyond a picarist, and a picarist, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is somebody who likes to make shallow cuts, and they get off in a sexual manner, in a abnormally sexual manner, due to inflicting small pokes, jabs, small cuts on a victim. And he exhibits that, but he goes beyond that. He is a murderer, and he is a fetishist. So it is very much about knife play, and you'll see in this beautiful edition where we've got some knife motifs abound, and just really, really a wonderful story. Now, he is a villain that creeped me out more as a teen than he does now, but that's not to say that I'm hardened to his particular insanity. This is the sort of psychopath that we don't even read about. Like, think of all the craziest killers that you've read about. This guy tops all of that. And granted, it's fiction. He can get away with a lot more insanity, and the end twist can be something, beyond ripped from headlines. The fiction here is stranger than truth, but not to a bizarre effect. And I'm not a big person for bizarro in my extreme sort of fiction, so yeah. I really liked this. This was really fun to return to, because I remembered, like I said, a lot of the killer's point of view, and there's a lot of that, but I totally forgot about the bouncing beach bunny, kind of very strange, broke up with my ex, so I'm going to date around, and the teachers that are all dating one another. It's very, very weird that way. So if you are a teacher and like teacher fiction, the way that a lot of people, writers like to see writers in fiction, and maybe there's a whole school of architects that like to see themselves in horror fiction, but you know how it's cool sometimes to read about your profession. If you're a teacher, this has a lot of teacher stuff in it, but it is quite brutal, so not for kids. So that was week 3 done. Week 4, this week that we're in right now, is the final week of Reading in Rumps, and I have had a lot of fun. This is a bonus week, and I'm going to wrap it up with Darkness Tell Us, which is a book a lot of people have read, and I haven't watched any real spoilery things, so I don't remember if I read this. Now, there is a Laymon book that has to do with two girls, maybe roommates or best friends. I think maybe roommates. And one is kind of frumpy and one is rather fit. And they go camping. And I don't know if that's this story. That could be a number of Laymon books because he himself spent a lot of time in the great outdoors, and that feeds this sort of stuff. And this is one of his great camping stories. There's a few other, of course, camping stories, and I think it's one of the other ones that I have in mind, but it could be this one. I don't even know. I'm very excited to get to it because I love Ouija board stories. I love Ouija boards to begin with, and I like camping, and I'm going to be spending some time in the great outdoors a little bit this coming week, so this might be a fit. I wasn't going to bring a book with me. I'm going to rely on my e-reader, and you'll see why in a minute, but I might bring this along. It is a pretty chill readathon, so I don't feel as beholden to bring this because I've done the 3 books, right? And like we've said before, many of the hosts and co-hosts of this readathon, if you've read one Laymon book this month, hooray, you've participated. So week 4 is a bonus, Campfire Trash Classic. Wrap it up by picking the most off-the-wall moment from your read and honoring it like the glorious literary insanity that it is. I really wanted to get to this, that's why it's included. Then I will pick what is the most off-the-wall insanity that happened within the 4 books that I've read right now. And as a double bonus, I think I will compare all of this to the insanity in the cellar and see how that ramps up, because very often, myself included, people have said throughout this readathon, it's not as crazy as the cellar. So yeah, Regina included. If you haven't been watching a lot of the videos along with Reading in Rumps, I have them in a playlist that I'll link down below, and I've been tagging other people's videos. If you made a video for Reading in Rumps, let me know and I'll throw it in the playlist as well. So we have something to look back on fondly each June. Now, I did finish reading No End House. That was an e-book that I had as an e-arc, and it was interesting. It was good. I think that if you are a fantasy fan, you'll have a lot more fun with it than I did. I enjoyed the main characters. I enjoyed the premise of them. Like I've said before, going to a escape room type thing in a whole big haunted mansion in Barcelona. It sounds really cool, but then it veers into a nightmare house, bad dream house, and it gets a little bit weird with the fantasy. And there was a point where I'm not going to give anything away, but there was a big, very, very large mythological creature that they end up riding. But before they were riding the mythological creature, I thought, man, if this thing talks to them, I'm out of here. But luckily, they just rode it around the dreamscape or whatever this place is. So it's very much more fantasy. It's almost YA, except that it does have very gory references. So yeah, it's really hard for me to compartmentalize. The writing is good. I'm not a fan of fantasy, so it's just not for me. So it was fun. If you want something that it's not really horror to me till the last chapter, and even so, some of the twists didn't land for me either. And they're not like twisty McTwists. They're just, there is something revealed in the last chapter. But yeah, not necessarily for me. Good writing, very interesting premise, very fun. But yeah, it's not like Saw or Hostel or anything that it was kind of pitched as. So yeah. If you like fantasy and want a lighter fare in your horror, this would be fun to read. But yeah, so I'm done reading that, but I do have another ebook on the go, Hellmouth of Bouley from the Bouley Mayhem by Tony Burgess. Bringing that along because Tony's from not too far from my hometown, so I'll be reading it sort of in that stomping ground, same sort of like stratosphere, same sort of atmosphere, same sort of trees, same sort of rocks. I've seen the film, Hellmouth. I think it's just Hellmouth in the film title. But I'm going to be reading Hellmouth of Bouley from the Bouley Mayhem, which is the collection that has Pontypool Changes Everything, Hellmouth of Bouley, and Cicera, which I've never read, so pretty interested in that. I'll read the one novel first and see how I go. But there is a patron pick on my e-reader as well right now. I've gotten to the 4th chapter and absolutely loving it because I love space horror. You'll hear horror fans who like sci-fi often say, I wish there was more of these Space Marines or alien books. Dead Space. Give me more Dead Space. think that this is going to be that, because it started out kind of perfectly for fans of Alien. We start by meeting people going to a mission to a space station that is a giant graveyard. It has malfunctioned, so they need to go and repair or fix this. I don't really want to get into the details because the fun is discovering a lot of the science fiction elements that John Palisano has injected into a horror story, a gothic horror. So I'm having a lot of fun reading this as this experiment, right? Putting two really beloved genres together really, really, really artfully, very, very well, and so far very well written. So we meet Ava, who is the commander of this mission, and we also meet one of my favorite characters, or who's going to be my favorite character, no matter how they pan out, the Humani. It is the droid, it is the AI, it is the bot, it is the android, and they're not masquerading as a person. They're actually an android, and everybody knows it. And their name is Midori, and I already love this character. So it's set up for a really good ride. Now, of course, Requiem was a patron pick. I've got a lot to read on the list right now, and I may be participating in a little readathon in August. So I've got a lot on the slate, but there will be another vote maybe later on in August for September on the Patreon, on Bookworm Central. I've renamed the channel here, but I haven't gotten around to renaming anything else, and it will remain Typical Books at typicalbooks.com, and my handle here on YouTube will remain Typical Books, but I haven't decided if I want to rename anything on the Patreon. So that'll be a conversation happening over there eventually. For now, it's still the patron picks poll, which is pretty generic, at the Bookworm Central, which is also, again, pretty generic. So yeah, this will also be in my bag. I think this is a little French book. It is Pour les enfants, and it is Le Cimetière Flottant. It is a choose your own adventure, or un jeu de page de destin horreur, and it is super fun. I didn't get super far in it because I died pretty quickly in a graveyard full of zombies, but it is a choose your own adventure, so I can have a lot more fun with it. And I think that once I read a few more, I'm going to start highlighting any words that I encounter that I don't recognize. So it'll be a learning tool eventually, but so far it's just fun summer reading because it is screaming hot here. I know that there's been several different heat warnings in various parts of the world. It's our turn now here in Ontario, and it is absolutely cooking in here right now. So I don't know. There may not be a video next week because I'm going to be on vacation, but we'll see. I know that this one was late for last week, so maybe I'll do the same thing and make a video on Sunday when I return, because I will be visiting my favorite bookstore, Allison the Bookman, something that I do often when I return home. And they have a fantastic clutch of horror books to paw through, so I will no doubt be picking something else up there, because I've absolutely bought nothing this week. There's no mergers and acquisitions to talk about. So yeah, there's no haul, but something did come in the mail. The most recent Rue Morgue Magazine. I haven't read the previous one because I haven't watched the new Final Destination movie yet, but I can read The Revenge of Alice Cooper anytime. Shock rock pioneers reunite after 50 years, and it is a very cool tell-all, I believe. Toxic Avenger, I don't need to have watched that to read about it. Mad Words with Chuck Tingle, though, and Masters of the English Ghost Story. So there's a lot more literary happenings in the pages of Rue Morgue these days. So I'm always happy to receive a copy. Always kind of ticked when I have to wait to read something. This has happened with Hereditary and quite a few other movies that I've had in the sadness. I've had to wait to read the article till I watch the movie. So this one's kind of on pause. The rest of the magazine's really cool though. So I might bring one of these with me on my travels. And while not necessarily a merger or acquisition, because it won't be something that ends up on my shelf, I do have a library hold right now. And I don't really use the library very often. I used to live in walking distance from one, and I'm not really that close really anymore. So I haven't been utilizing it. And I don't read a lot of audiobooks. And I saw Criminali put a really cool video about audiobooks, talking about, does this count as reading? So I'm about to watch that, but I've got one on order. I've got a Riley Sager book on order, but there's only 17 copies or something like that, and I'm still in line. And this has been weeks waiting for it. There's another Chuck Wendig book, and there's only 4 copies, and I'm 17th in line for that. So I'm waiting and waiting and waiting. I was really hoping to have an audiobook for this travel. Not that there's a lot of driving, but it's a little, and it's nice to listen to something. So I thought I'd try it out there. It hasn't come in yet, though. However, there is a nonfiction book about the teen horror cycle by Alexandra West. You may know that name from working on the Faculty of Horror podcast alongside Andrea Subasati, and the two of them are wonderful to listen to, discuss and tear apart or boost movies that you have seen or movies you haven't. And they've talked about some of this teen horror cycle films, and we're going to be covering one soon on my podcast with Wes Dead Air Night, Dead Air at splatterpictures.net. We'll be talking about I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is cool. We just did The Faculty as well. So I thought I'd get Alex's book because it's not a corner of horror I'm very knowledgeable in, and I'd love to read an academic take on what happens to the kids on bikes when they grow up, right? So yeah, that'll be coming up. If any of these books, like Darkness Tell Us, Cuts by Richard Laymon, or of course Requiem by John Palisano, are on your reading list, let me know in the comments below, because I'm very interested to hear if you love space horror, or of course just love Richard Laymon, or if you don't mind a little fantasy in your horror books. Let me know in the comments, or if there's something that you think I ought to be reading, I'd love to hear about it. Thank you very much for watching, and have an ooky, spooky day.